Week 4 in the books. Week 5 on tap. We got the Week 5 waiver wire ads and trade targets for fantasy football right here on the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. What up, everybody? Welcome back to the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. I'm your host, Sky Guasco. You can find me on Twitter at Sky Guasco, SkyGuasco, joined by my man Matt Stiles at Stiles08. We had a great Sunday live show. Matt, you've been out the last couple weeks, traveling around a little bit, so we've had some subs in here, but we did week 1. We're back for, or week 2 rather. We're back for week 5, and I'm very excited to cover the week 5 waiver ads and, of course, a couple of trade targets as well. And I've been repping your article quite a bit over the last couple weeks, but we'll give you an opportunity to do that yourself here in just a second. Before we do that, of course, I want to make sure everybody is following everything Razzball at Razzball, RAZZBALL, at Razzball or Razzball Fantasy. Of course, give us a subscribe, rate, and review on the podcast as well. And of course, the YouTube channel right here, you can hit that bell, leave a comment below also. And again, make sure to rep myself and Matt on Twitter as well. Let's get into the week 5 action, man. Before we do that, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know where they can find your free content for the waiver ads?
All right. Thanks, Guy. My guy, the waiver wire article is up, as always, at the Razzball site. Like you said, in front of any paywall. The majority of what we offer is free here at Razzball. So you go out to Razzball, you click on NFL, it'll open up the top 3 articles and then some other featured content, not to mention even Bobby Lamarco's article about the slot and wide percentages for defense. Such an awesome tool. It actually won me my week 3 matchup. I was going to start CEH, and after Bobby's analysis that said Hollywood is a must start, I started Hollywood based on the defensive matchup, and he put up 31 in a full PPR. So good stuff out there in front of the paywall, free for everybody. Go out there and read it, and feel free to add questions at the bottom of the waiver wire article. I do my best to answer all of those within, 2 to 3 hours max. Sometimes I can get to them in 2 to 3 minutes. So shout out to Sport and some of the other guys that are out there asking questions. I've hit everybody so far. So more questions, and I'll give you more answers.
Yeah, we love that. And again, you can find so much content on the Razzball.com website, of course. And, no offense to your article, Matt, certainly no offense to my own personal article in the trade talks. But as far as football goes, what Bob does with the slot versus wide, it's something that I personally use every single week for my start sit solutions. And to be honest with you, those of our viewers and readers and listeners that were with us Sunday morning, they heard us reference the slot versus wide multiple times through that own start sit tool there. We were talking Raiders specifically and Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy and how that might look because the Raiders have been so dominant against outside receivers and so forth. So that's a great tool as well. But today we're here to talk about the week 5 waiver ads. And of course, Matt, as you run that article here, I would love to turn it over to you, man. And you know the drill. Let's give the folks maybe your waiver wire ad of the week. If they have that top waiver priority, or they may, they want to spend that fab. Maybe they need a top running back or a wide receiver, streaming a quarterback in a super flex or something. Who's your top waiver wire ad? And then go ahead and give us a couple of quarterbacks to look at.
Sure. So to me, the top ad is Romeo Doubs, but you probably missed the Doubs train. He is probably soaked up in most of your leagues. I think he's at 69%. Is that the current number? I should have had that memorized. But, he's 69% rostered across Yahoo. If you can get him, that would be the guy to go after. But assuming that he's too much owned, right? He's too high a percentage and you do not have access to him, I would lean towards Rachaad White after seeing what he did in a game script heavy football game on Sunday night, right? They had to throw. I think at one point the announcer mentioned that Brady had thrown 26 straight passes, right? So that's 26 shotguns in a row where he just threw the ball. And most of it was to Mike Evans, Rachaad White, and Leonard Fournette. Chris Godwin looked great. Cameron Brate, after the first half, he was out of it because he got knocked around pretty good. But Rachaad White is probably not a must start yet. I think he can be down the line. So this is one of those where you're planning ahead. you get to him before the rest of your owners are savvy enough to go get him, especially if you lost Javonte Williams. And by the way, back to Sunday, right? I said it was the start of Javonte season. Well, Javonte season never even got started. So pour out a little bit for Javonte and his ACL and his LCL. But this is a good time for you to stay the course. Don't panic. Realize that there are options out there. I do like White. I do like Dobbs. But we also have some other guys that are out there. The Atlanta backfield, right, before we get into quarterbacks, those guys both had solid performances when Cordarrelle Patterson went down. It will be a full committee, in my opinion, but both of them are worth an ad. I wouldn't pay too much for them, right? Don't mortgage the house to get either Allgeier or Caleb Huntley. Allgeier will probably be the guy that's owned more than Huntley, but I think they're both worthy of looks. And then my deep guy is Isiah Pacheco. If you watch the Kansas City game, the guy is a horse. He can carry the load. CEH is out snapping him by a ton. But again, he's one of those guys that you're planning for the future. So CEH is not a big dude. He has got some injury concerns over the years. So Pacheco is a selection that you stash. And I think that his snap count will go up and up and up. And by the way, don't be shocked if he gets goal line carries. Even though CEH has 5 touchdowns so far, his body's not made for that type of running. And we all know Jerick McKinnon absolutely is not that guy. And I fully expect, and I said this in my article, Pacheco is going to usurp Jerick McKinnon if he hasn't already done so. So give me your thoughts on those names, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I totally agree. So first of all, on the CAH comment, I agree. I was kind of a CEH doubter only because we hadn't seen it yet. And, you know, he's running back number 4 in PPR so far this season. So that's no joke. I mean, he's only 10 behind Nick Chubb and Saquon Barkley for number 1, and that's just about a touchdown, right? So yeah. CH is definitely getting the utilization. Obviously, you mentioned those 5 touchdowns, so I love that. But I saw Jerick McKinnon get paid a lot of money in San Francisco to sit on the bench for 3 seasons. So I'm also, you know, not excited about that. And so Pacheco is definitely a guy I'd like to have as a deeper stash. I've been a Tyler Algier guy by all summer long, and I like him a lot. Huntley came on and played well there, so that's going to be an interesting ad also. And then again, I mean, Romeo Doubs and Rachaad White are the easy pickings there, but may not be as available at this point going into week 5. In the super flex realm, and of course, you know, it's not often you find a quarterback available. Maybe Kenny Pickett's still floating out there at this point. It didn't get picked up early this season. But in a super flex setting, it's often impossible to find a quality quarterback on the waivers. But in single quarterbacks, let's look at some of the names that might be out there to spot fill. And we do have bye weeks starting to come up here over the next couple of weeks. So who are a couple quarterbacks you have your eye on here moving into week 5?
I can't believe I'm going to say it. Donkey Teeth loves it when I say it, right? He preached about this guy going into the season. Geno Smith, you have to pay attention to him at this point. He leads the NFL in completion percentage. He's got a rushing touchdown with 64 yards on the ground, and he's got 6 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. And by the way, that team is awful. They are going to have to throw all year from behind. They're in a tough division, right? The Rams aren't as bad as what we saw last night. The Niners may be for real. I know you're going to touch on that in a little bit, right? You're probably itching to do so, but that's a tough division, right? The Cardinals are probably going to continue to get better as they let Kyler run around. So Seattle's going to be struggling in division games, and they're going to struggle in their conference games. It's just if they can keep Geno upright, provide him a little protection, I think Lockett and DK Metcalf could have good seasons. I don't know that they're going to be in the end zone a lot, but you know, in PPR formats, half and full point, they're going to eat. They're going to score their points. So. I can't believe I'm recommending Geno Smith, but he might even be available in Superflex leagues. He's certainly available in the majority of single quarterback leagues. He's only 13% rostered across the Yahoo formats. And the other guy I have listed, right? He's just blah. He's just meh. He's whatever. Ryan Tannehill, right? As you come up to bye weeks, you're hoping for 250 and 2 touchdowns, and maybe he vultures a rushing touchdown, but Tannehill just kind of does what he does. He's boring. I would even venture a guess that he might be more boring than Kirk Cousins. But sometimes you need boring to win a week, and the rest of your team can go off when Tannehill just kind of does what he's supposed to do. But again, not a guy available probably in Superflex, but he's only 27% rostered in single quarterback leagues in Yahoo. So both decent names. And then you've got Zach Wilson, who's buried a little bit, right? Because Flacco started the season. And then Matt Ryan, right? We talked about him on Sunday. I think I was the only guy that supported him, basically because I said he appeared to be a nice guy. But Matt Ryan may have won some games for people on Sunday. He put up big numbers. We got good news that Jonathan Taylor's high ankle sprain is not a high ankle sprain, so he probably will not miss time. And Paris Campbell actually looked all right. Alec Pierce looked good, and Pittman is going to be Pittman over time. So, and by the way, we had a Mo Alley Cox sighting.
All three tight ends caught a touchdown.
Crazy. So Matt Ryan, and then I think if you go further down to 7% owned is Jacoby Brissett. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he came out, caught a few passes, and Njoku looks good each week. That's a late round pick that Bobby recommended in the late summer. So there's still some names in single quarterback leagues that you can go after. But right now, if I had to target one, it would be Geno Smith. And I don't know. You take it. You take Geno Smith from there. I don't know.
Absolutely. So I'm going to throw you a bone here, and I would put you on the what the hell? We'll do it. A pop quiz. Geno Smith, Jacoby Brissett, Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan. How many of those guys have more fantasy points after 4 weeks than Aaron Rodgers?
I would say at least 2 of them. It's probably 3.
4.
Wow.
Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan, Jacoby Brissett, and Geno Smith all have more fantasy points after 4 weeks than Aaron Rodgers does. Geno Smith, by the way, folks, QB 10 on the season. The rest of them are floating between 17 and 22. So Aaron Rodgers is as much of a streamer as the rest of these guys, and Aaron Rodgers is getting started every single week. So Jacoby Brissett, Ryan Tannehill, and Matt Ryan may or may not be better options than Aaron Rodgers moving forward week to week, obviously. But that is just kind of something interesting to look at after the first quarter. All right, let's move on. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, let's talk about, you mentioned Romeo Doubs earlier. Let's talk about some of these wide receivers that you have lined up for week 5.
For me, the must add right now is George Pickens. If I read the statistics right, Pickett came in and rushed for 2 touchdowns.
Oh yeah,
and threw three interceptions. Is that right?
Yes, and I will say really quickly here, I have a great friend of mine who's a big-time Steelers fan. I was talking to him all stoked about Pickett, and I'm like, there's the pick. Oh, there's the pick. Oh, there's the pick. All 3 of those interceptions, I would argue all day long that none of them were actually his fault. One of them was the Hail Mary at the very end of the game, which that one doesn't matter. The other one was a tip pass, and then the other one essentially was basically like clearly a miscommunication, wrong route situation where it came due to like the wide receiver issue. So
right.
I don't think any of those are Pickett's issue, and he did show great work on the ground, and I think the Steelers are in good hands moving forward. But it was a rough debut, but I think the Steelers are just fine.
Yeah, and I think Pickett, if he's an ad for you, again, Superflex, like you mentioned, he's probably going to get the break speed off him this Sunday. Or is it Thursday? No, it's Sunday. When they go to Buffalo. I think Buffalo is mad that they didn't look great, even though they won against Baltimore. And Buffalo is just a better football team right now. So yeah. I would not be streaming Kenny Pickett this weekend, but George Pickens is a guy that you could stash him now. He's not quite a must start yet, but I think he's trending in that way. And I think the odd man out will be Claypool. Deontay is clearly the number one, but Pickett seems to have a really good rapport with Pickens. And that's a good thing for those people that grab Pickens late in the draft. He's currently, I think, 40% owned in Yahoo. And the only other guy I recommend that's slightly owned more than him at 41% is Michael Gallup, kind of for the same reasons, right? Gallup was injured. Dak is injured, even though Cooper Rush has been good. Dak is better. We have to all admit that. No matter what we see in the 3-0 Cooper Rush record, we all know Dak is better. So I think that Gallup is a good ad as well. But again, neither one of those guys is must start yet. I think you grab them, make them prove it, and then you can start starting them after that. Did I say start starting? I did. Then you can begin starting them sometime after that. But both good.
I agree.
And then Corey Davis, I've had him too many times. I don't want anything to do with him, but I recommended him as an honorable mention in my article. And then think about how bad the Giants wide receiver core is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I heard somebody on the radio today call him cadaverous Tony.
Oh, yikes.
Might have been John Hansen, right? These guys are terrible. Galladay got hurt after we talked about how bad he was in the season. So they say Wandale Robinson is supposed to be back, could be back this week. And he's got nobody else to throw to. So it's Bellinger at tight end and Saquon out of the backfield. But at a certain point, defenses are going to just lean on stopping Saquon Barkley. So Robinson caught 100 balls in the SEC. That means he's pretty good at football. And that was last year alone. That wasn't over his career. So maybe it's a deep stash, especially if your roster is blown up or if you had a deep roster where you can afford to put him on there. And again, he's a prove it guy. So let me see it from you first, and we'll go from there. But
I totally agree. Love Michael Gallup. I've got him stashed on as many leagues as I could possibly get him. I was a big Michael Gallup homer last year, and of course he got hurt and went down, but I had him everywhere last year. Have him again this year stashing, and I'm waiting for that breakout as well. Noah Brown's been fun. He's another name that you could have for another week or two, but he's been fun, but he'll be that number 2 moving forward there. Before we go any further with the waivers, I'd like to jump in here. Kazi, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly here. We got a question here, start sit here for you, Matt. We got another one from Christian about the running backs that came in as well that I'll double back on. So Kazi wants to know at the flex position, Godwin, Sutton, CD, or Amari Cooper. It's a great foursome there. So flex, let's assume it's half PPR as we always do when they don't let us know. Godwin, Sutton, CD, Cooper.
I think it's got to be CD Lamb for me, followed probably by Sutton because Russ actually played football on Sunday. Then Godwin, injury concern is concerning to me as well, but he took some vicious hits on Sunday, but he stuck with it. I think it looked like he may have got like a hip pointer late where he was kind of rolling around a little bit. But Amari Cooper, right, he had his run of a couple of games, which he does every year. Out of that group, he's probably my 4th. Even though I have him, I have him in best ball, so I just wait for him to pop off every once in a while, and then best ball. He's a good ad in best ball. When I drafted him, I'm not sure I ever wanted him in season long. He's just super frustrating to watch week in and week out.
Yeah, likewise. I'm going to go CD, Sutton, Godwin, and Cooper as well. Godwin got peppered, but it's very short so far. He can't quite get the longer routes in there, but I think he'll be just fine long term. But again, CD, Sutton, Godwin, Cooper, I agree. CD Lamb has 19 fantasy points on average with Cooper Rush this year, which of course we love there. Let's double back quickly before we get the tight ends here. Christian wants to know, trade Breece Hall for Aaron Jones. So you're giving Breece Hall, I assume, to get Aaron Jones. Please tell me I'm not overthinking this, that this is an easy smash.
You know me, you see the hat, right? There's a big G on it. I'm taking Aaron Jones all day, but I think Breece Hall is making a case for, top 12, 15 running back for the rest of the season. He just appears to be good. He can catch the ball. He's getting peppered with targets, but for me, it's Aaron Jones. I don't. If offered that, I take it in a heartbeat. I don't even think about it. Now, if I have Breece Hall, right, and he's carried me, and I watch his points, maybe that's a different story, right? I have to pause and think about it. But I don't. From my perspective, I don't. This is a no-brainer. You take Aaron Jones.
Totally agree. I'm going to go Aaron Jones as well. It's a proven commodity. It's the offense in general. I know we just talked about Aaron Rodgers being outside the top 15 quarterbacks, but that doesn't matter for Aaron Jones. He's doing just fine. He's outpacing A.J. Dillon in all the categories we were worried about preseason. So far, so good there. Breece Hall is on the come up. And look, if Breece Hall ends up being a couple years ago, David Montgomery or J.K. Dobbins or Jonathan Taylor as a rookie, where the last 6-8 weeks of the season, he's just blowing everyone out of the water, maybe we eat crow on this, but it's week 5 and he's still splitting the backfield. And I'm still not convinced. The Jets had a fun victory over the Steelers, but I'm still not convinced that that offense is high flying by any means. And the Packers can put up 40 points on any given weekend. So I'm going to take Aaron Jones all day long here. But I agree with you. It is more of a thinking point than I thought when I originally read the question. But as of week 5 right now, I will take Aaron Jones. Yep. All right, let's quickly get to the tight ends here. We'll take a quick commercial break, and then I'll get into my trade targets as well. So we got a couple tight ends that are starting to pop off. And as you mentioned, man, you watch the games, you're like, oh, 3 Colts caught a tight end. Which one do I want? Do I want any of them? Cameron Brate was fun, but he got hurt. Dalton Schultz is in and out of the lineup. These tight ends are so hard to bank on when we're talking waivers, but who are a couple of the tight ends maybe that are popping off for you heading into week 5?
So week 4 waivers, same guy I'm recommending in week 5. People they listened, but not enough people listened. Tyler Conklin is still the top tight end ad for me. He went from like 23% rostered to 42 in Yahoo. So he almost doubled his ownership. However, he's still a guy that I think needs to be added. He's averaging double-digit fantasy points in full PPR. And I think Zach Wilson is going to need short passes for a while. And I think Conklin has proved himself. I think over time, Zach Wilson's going to want to throw deep, right? He's got 3 guys that can do that with Moore and Wilson and Corey Davis. But I don't know how good that offensive line is. And I think Conklin's going to still get his targets from time to time. I recommended as a deep sleeper last week, Jelani Woods. Well, he kind of disappeared, so it was the Mo Alley Cox show. I don't know that I add him, but if you have space and you need a bye week guy, you just never know when he's going to go off. But I like Robert Tonyan. I think that as the season moves on, he's going to garner more targets, right? I think that Cobb is probably too old. He's not running a lot of routes, but when he does, he's been effective, but I think that role may be kind of taken over by Tonyan as we move forward. And the other 2 tight ends in Green Bay, or rather 3 tight ends, just don't catch the ball. They're more of blocking tight end types. And then Will Dissly, go look at how many touchdowns the guy has in Seattle. You can't ignore it. So I just don't know that. And back to Geno, right? There should be enough throwing opportunities where Dissly will be relevant. I don't know that you want to start him every week, but he's certainly in the conversation for relevancy.
I totally agree. I was just pulling up Will Dissly just in case you didn't get to him and you pulled him in right at the last second there. But for me, I absolutely agree. Well, look, when you're streaming a tight end, you're hoping for like 4 for 40. I know that sounds pitiful, but that's 8 PPR points, and then maybe they catch a touchdown to put you over the top. Will Dissly has caught every single target this year, which is not much, but he is literally 100% completion percentage going to Will Dissly. Not huge yardage, doesn't matter. He scored in 3 of his 4 games, and he's had double-digit fantasy points in PPR in 3 or 4 games, which, again, for a streaming tight end, George Kittle definitely hasn't done that all season long, right? I mean, Mark Andrews just scored like 3 fantasy points this week. It happens. Will Dissly is strangely, fantasy points-wise, pretty consistent. So keep an eye on him. And hopefully, the Seahawks can keep this up. I mean, yeah, it's kind of a running joke that Geno Smith is who he is right now, but the reality is, like, they're playing well, and he is putting up the fantasy points. So
win fantasy, right? Ride them while they're hot.
Exactly. Yep. We got 2 questions here before I get into a commercial break. I want to give a shout out to my man Aaron Pierce popping in. He's a regular on the Sunday Live Start Sit show that everybody should be tuning into 3 hours before kickoff right here on the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. We've got myself, Matt, Gladys, Bob, all sorts of folks tuning in and out on that every single week to answer your start sit questions on Sunday mornings, 3 hours before kickoff. Check us out there. Aaron just wants to throw out, Deebo pulled me out of a 30% chance last night. So you were that big time underdog. Deebo had a huge game. Obviously, I'm going to talk about him a little bit more later on. And Chad White tuning in here. I was offered Naji Harris for Brian Robinson. This is half PPR. I like it, but a new quarterback for the Steelers means new offense. The Washington offensive line is bad, constantly throwing to running backs when Wentz is rushed. So do we like the dump down potential? Do we like maybe Brian Robinson coming in, supplanting Antonio Gibson, maybe kicking out J.D. McKissick on occasion? Or are we going to ride the wave of Naji Harris, who I had huge expectations for? It hasn't quite happened yet. I like Kenny Pickett moving forward, but maybe this new Steelers offense is a little stunted for a few weeks. Moving forward, do you want Naji Harris or Brian Robinson in a half PPR league?
So I'm going to disagree a little bit with Chad. I don't think it means a new offense for Pittsburgh. I think it means a new quarterback, right? And it might mean a new quarterback that has better skills than Mitchell Trubisky. And I'm okay with that. They're not going to revamp their offense. That's not what they do. And again, this is a no-brainer, right? If this comes in my inbox, I'm not thinking twice. The better player is Naji Harris. Brian Robinson, we don't know anything about. We know that he beat out Antonio Gibson. So what? It's Antonio Gibson. We know that the guy had 2 bullets lodged in him. I mean, outside of those 2 things, we don't know anything about him except what we saw in college. And he was really good in college. But for me, I take the known quantity, like you said earlier, and give me Naji Harris all day. And I'm not a Naji Harris truther. I was not in on him this year. I had other targets that I was happy to take in the first round. And he was one of those guys just like Saquon, and I was wrong on that so far. When those guys got drafted, I felt a little bit of relief. I'm like, you could feel it wash over you because you didn't have to make a decision if you were going to draft those guys in season long. So once they went, I felt better about it. But for this one, again, it's Naji Harris for me. And I'm okay being wrong later on, right? I'm okay being wrong.
Yeah, I'm going to go Naji as well. I like Brian Robinson long-term. I think he's going to be a quality player. He might even become the starter in the second half of the season, and he could have a nice run down the season. However, we know that Naji, while he's not been incredibly efficient or scoring very much, he is getting 20-plus touches a game. And I know it's not pretty, but, it's the Zeke thing right now. It's like it's a slug, but it's working, and that's what you want. Brian Robinson's not even 100% healthy yet, and we don't know what the workload is, and we don't know if we can trust him. And what if this kid comes in and fumbles on his 3rd NFL carry? Yep. Like they just bench him for 2 games? Like, I'm with you, man. If this trade comes back to me in like week 8, week 9, and we've seen a little bit of Brian Robinson and Naji has a month or 2, then we can make that decision. But right now it's Naji and it's not close. Although I do love Brian Robinson long term. Right now, though, I'll take Naji Harris. All right, everybody. I'm going to give Matt a quick water break here to gather his thoughts and get into the trade targets. Before I do that, I want to give, of course, a big shout out to our good friends at Good Sports. Once again, all of the contributions that come to Razzball via our Sunday live show or through our Venmo and the PayPal there, you can see the punch code there that you can type in and give any contributions. 10% of all those donations go to a wonderful charity that we're so happy to be a part of and friends with, and that is our good friends at Good Sports. Good Sports services over 90 million children around the U.S. and out to Puerto Rico. 6,000 organizations are eligible to receive these equipment donations. 55,000 individual play packs have been distributed for these kids to play, and almost $90 million in value of equipment distributed has been available to these children who are having a tough time maybe getting to practice. Perhaps they live in rural areas. They live out in the country, perhaps in some of those sprawling states. Maybe they're inner city kids who are unable to find rides to practice or get there safely. This is a great opportunity to give back to not only your community, but the communities at large. And for many of us, of course, we played youth sports growing up, and this was such a big part of our upbringing and, learning great life skills and integrity and discipline. And it was so important to play youth sports as a kid for me, football, baseball. And I know, many of us here on the Razzball team played all sorts of sports moving forward. So we're so appreciative of our good friends at Good Sports to be a part of what Razzball does and support us. And so we would love the opportunity to also support them as well. So once again, if you would like to, please make sure that you hit any sort of contribution right here to the Razzball team. And you can hit that Sunday start sit show up there with the reminder, and you can hit that little punch code right there that'll take you to our Venmo and our PayPal, and you can go ahead and contribute if you would like to. So we much appreciate it. Let's jump back into the trade targets here, and we'll talk about a couple week 5 trade targets. Now, of course, these players, we're going to take a little wheeling and dealing, if you will. These are kind of tricky for me to find every single week because I try to be realistic. Like, of course, a guy like, I don't know, Jonathan Taylor gets a bit injured and he has a down game, and everyone's like, buy low on Jonathan Taylor. Like, you have to go get him. It's like nobody is trading Jonathan Taylor unless his foot falls off, which it might, but it hasn't yet. So these are kind of some tricky questions sometimes, but my buy low quarterback is going to be Tom Brady. Tom Brady finally showed up for the first time this season. Mike Evans comes back healthy. Julio Jones hasn't done much, but he was out there at minimum as a decoy. And of course, then you also have Chris Godwin returning as well. Tom Brady went off for 300 plus and 3 touchdowns. And expect this offense to continue to grow and get back to what we saw last year throughout the rest of the season. So it's an opportunity for Tom Brady to, he's right now, he's outside the top 15 as well. And you're going to be able to get, I think, best value on him moving forward. Of course, everybody saw that, that game, I think, on national TV. But at the same time, this is going to be something that, with a loss and how things went down with the Chiefs and everything like that, I think that Tom Brady might be gettable right now. So that is definitely something I'm looking forward to. My next player here is, I'll go through all my buy lows, Matt, and I'll let you the reply here on these guys. So my next guy here is Breece Hall. Breece Hall for the Jets, we've talked about a little bit earlier on. I had mentioned in week 2, Michael Carter was my sell high. He had a nice game. That's fine. I was like, get rid of him while you can. Breece Hall's coming up behind him. Sure enough, Breece Hall now all of a sudden is taking over snap share, taking over rushing percentage, taking over efficiency, taking over passing downs work. Those are all the things trending in the right direction for a young running back to start taking over that number 1 role we expect him to have in the second half of the season. As we had mentioned earlier, there's a chance that Breece Hall eventually has 15 carries for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. Guess what? He's going to be untouchable at that point. So if I'm able to get him before that, I would like to secure him if possible. My next one here at the wide receiver, my buy low. This one's a little bit sticky and I don't love it, but I have to bank on some history and opportunity. And it's my boy, the OG Robert Woods of the Tennessee Titans. And this is strictly based on Treylon Burks being out indefinitely, essentially, unfortunately, with turf toe. We've seen so many great players. I think the most famous case back in the day was Deion Sanders, right? Who was constantly hobbled by turf toe back in the day. And it was kind of a laughable injury. But now you start thinking like, man, like if this is sidelining a professional athlete, it's a problem. And if you've had anything like plantar fasciitis or turf toe, as they call it, it's a real big deal. It's hard to walk, let alone run routes. So Robert Woods is somebody that's getting more opportunity. I think he's going to be that number 1, maybe a number 2. Derrick Henry is catching more balls out of the backfield, which is excellent. But when it's, it's go time, it's looking for a first down. They gain that rapport early on. I think Robert Woods will continue to build. And if he's even on waivers, but if he's on a roster, he's an easy grab, probably for free. And this other one is most likely impossible, but it's very hard to find a buy low tight end every week because anyone that's successful, no one's going to get rid of. This might be the one single week all season long you can even attempt to have a conversation to go sell the farm and get Mark Andrews. And if you can, I want to. Like if you have running backs and you can get rid of Naji Harris, for example, I would do that. If you have a plethora of wide receivers and somebody needs a wide receiver and maybe a Brian Robinson and a wide receiver, a middling wide receiver or something for Mark Andrews, and you don't have that solid tight end, I would go do that move as well. I want to make sure that happens. So Mark Andrews is probably impossible, but I had to find somebody with my buy low. So Matt, I've talked a lot here. I'll read the comments and we'll get to those in just a second. But buy low reactions to Tom Brady, Breece Hall, Robert Woods, and Mark Andrews.
Tom Brady, right? I talked about it a little bit earlier. We're going to see the 45 pass Tom Brady, right? Fournette has proven so far that he can't run between the tackles this year. I think he's still got it in him, but their offensive line is absolutely atrocious. They're just not good. So Brady is the guy that is going to be really, really, really pissed. And I don't think he's going to bite his tongue in team meetings. And I think he's going to say our best chance to winning is by putting the football in my hands. So I think they're going to spread it out. I think that both Fournette and Rachaad White are going to have tons of looks out of the backfield. And I think that everybody that you mentioned, other than Julio Jones, is going to continue to put up big numbers. I just think Julio Jones is done. He can't stay on the field. He can't stay healthy. He just did not look good. He doesn't look fast anymore. He's got great hands, but he doesn't have much separation. So Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, all of those guys, plus the 2 running backs, Cameron Brate, if and when he's healthy, all good receivers. And I think Brady, they may have missed the bus on Brady, right? It may be 1 week too late, but I agree. Buy low if you can. I wouldn't, again, mortgage the house to do it, but that's a good buy low. Breece Hall, I think you absolutely probably have missed out. Based on what he's averaging now, the likelihood of you being able to go out and coax Breece Hall out of somebody is probably slim to none. Now, as we saw earlier, the guy that's got Aaron Jones on the table to give up Breece Hall, I think that's one that you have to take. Somebody is valuing Breece Hall a little bit too heavy. And the only concern I have with Aaron Jones is he basically didn't play the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Right? They put Corey Dillon in and he closed shop. Now, Green Bay had to take it to overtime to end up winning that football game. But for whatever reason, the head coach and offensive coordinator decided they were going to put Dillon in the fourth quarter, and Aaron Jones just kind of sat on the sideline. But he was wrecking that defense. Against New England. New England's they're not a pushover defense. So that was strange. But I think Breece Hall, again, I think you probably missed the bus. I think it's too late to go out and get him. Wide receiver wise, with the Burks injury, I think Robert Woods is a good target. I wouldn't trade a lot to own him, mainly because that's a run first offense. And Tannehill, even though I said you don't consider going out to add him off the wire to cover your bye weeks, I just don't know that they throw enough. But every once in a while, they're going to come out and you're going to see Tannehill throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He does it every year. But based on the viable names that are out there for receivers, again, if Dobbs isn't out there, then Robert Woods is a good add. I would like to see Burks come back, which will help. I think only helps Woods' case. But, I mean, name a tight end in Tennessee. They don't have a lot of viable assets. They do have a running back that can come out of the backfield that can catch, and his name is not Henry. But Henry also has learned to catch the football, so he's becoming more valuable. So I think Woods is a decent add. Again, you'd have to find the right trade partner, and maybe a handcuff running back type like a Madison would make sense. But that's one that you'd have to kind of work into the deal. And if you can trade for Mark Andrews, do it. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
I totally agree there. Let's get to a couple of these questions here, and then I will give you my my sell highs, and we will get out here quick. Aaron wants to know here. So this one's tough. Jamar Chase had a breakout week 1, but he's been averaging 11.8 over the last 3 games. I'm having a tough time keeping him in your lineup. What do you guys think? I think he's a must start, and I know that a lot of people are like, he's really good, and his name is popular, and he could break out, and there's too many must start guys. I just think like that's kind of hogwash throughout the fantasy industry. Like a lot of people are not must start. Everybody is on the level of, situational. There are a few guys at each position though that are must start, and Jamar Chase, in my opinion, is one of them. Do you agree?
I do, and I would ask your buddy Aaron if he had Justin Jefferson, who blew up week 1 and shit the bed weeks 2 and 3. Did you start him last week? You absolutely do. Unless he's injured, right? Or unless Cousins is injured, you start Justin Jefferson. I think the same thing with Jamar Chase. And, based on NFL defensive coordinators making adjustments, and they do, right? They get paid a lot of money to make adjustments. At a certain point, they're going to say, well, we have to stop T. Higgins from destroying us. And when that happens and they shift coverage to stop T. Higgins, Jamar Chase is going to get his. He's just too good to stay down. And by the way, I think Joe Burrow is off to a really slow start. He's starting to rev it up a little bit, but the engine's still kind of cool. And I think when Joe Cool comes back out, all bets are off. And by the way, Mixon looks pedestrian right now. So they may be throwing the ball a little bit more. I'd like to see Mixon in the mix, cliche intended there, but I don't own him anywhere. So throw the ball, Joe Burrow. I'm fine with that. And I think Jamar Chase will be the recipient of a lot of targets down the stretch. And we're a quarter into the season, right? So there are some guys that may take a while to get warmed up, and Chase may be that guy.
Yep, I agree. And Aaron, I would definitely say that he's a must start every single week. However, if he does this another week or 2, maybe you can move him for somebody else and go try to get T. Higgins, because T. Higgins is basically Jamar Chase right now and much cheaper. So think about that moving forward. Juke does have a question down here. I'll get to in 2 seconds, but I did want to just bring this up here. We do offer trade advice. So I appreciate anybody even considering our advice worthy. But yes, we do. So if anybody has that, go ahead. We're getting a little long in the tooth on this episode here, so we might table some of those questions. But of course, we always recommend folks to come to our Sunday live start sit show every single Sunday, 3 hours before kickoff, when Matt and myself and other people on the Razzball team are sitting here for 3 hours answering all of your start sit questions and trade inquiries as well. So we don't get to them on these particular episodes because we have a lot to do in a short amount of time. We're happy to table those and bring them.
And by the way, during the early game, right, the London game, we were there. We were waiting for the people to come in with the questions. So make sure that you come in and sign in during the London game. We'll give you updates while the game's going, or we'll take the updates from you, and we'll answer your questions for the other morning games and the afternoon and evening games as well. We'll be there no matter what.
Absolutely. Not only that, but we did have in the moment live on air Latavius Murray coverage. So you're not going to find that anywhere else in the industry. So feel free to join us every single Sunday morning. Juke does have his question here. Deebo, Penny, and Njoku Olave for Mark Andrews, Leonard Fournette, and Hopkins. So this is a big one. Full PPR. My other wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, T. Higgins, Michael Thomas. I'm in a desperate need of a running back. We got to get this. We got to get a running back here, and there's a lot going on. So he's looking for Leonard Fournette, who is the running back. Nuke Hopkins hasn't even played yet, but he's coming back in a couple of weeks. And then we have Mark Andrews on the table, who I just said, go get him if you possibly can. Now, is this a package, Matt? That would be worth it. Deebo Samuel, who just had a big game, but spoiler alert, I'm about to tell you to sell high. So Juke is stealing my thunder here, which I appreciate. But Deebo, Penny, who also had a massive game, David Njoku, who's fine, but he's been coming on, and Chris Olave, who looks to be already the best wide receiver in New Orleans, but he's also got Michael Thomas. So Deebo, Penny, and Njoku Olave for Mark Andrews, Leonard Fournette, and Hopkins. Let's try to keep this one a little bit short here, but full PPR and considering all the other wide receivers here, this is a big question.
I think he's got a running back in Penny, right?
Do you trust Penny, though?
No, I don't know that I trust Fournette either.
Okay, well then just call them a wash and do the rest of it. Call them a wash.
I think I trust Fournette a little bit more. If he could switch Michael Thomas for Olave, I'd probably make that deal. Pull Olave back to your roster, put Michael Thomas in the deal, and I can sign off on it.
So you'd rather have Olave than Michael Thomas, and then you would take Andrews, Hopkins, and Fournette.
Yep.
Yeah, man, you got Amon-Ra and T. Both those guys are – I know Amon-Ra missed time and T. Higgins is coming back, but both those guys are studs. I like Olave moving forward as well. I'm with you, dude.
And for me, and I wrote it in my article today, I think that when Hopkins comes back, this is not 2016 Nuke Hopkins. This is dude not all PED'd up. This is dude, 6 years further into his career. I think Hollywood Brown continues to be the wide receiver one.
Awesome.
So I don't think you get the Nuke that you're used to. Now he's good. He's a great NFL football player, but I don't see him like to me he's a toss in that. Don't let the guy offering those three players to you sell you that DeAndre Hopkins is a big piece of that trade. Tell him you're not even interested in Hopkins, but you'll take him as part of the deal. That's what I would do. I'd play passive aggressive.
Love it. And Juke gave us the sub. Appreciate you, Juke. Thanks so much for jumping in. We have a couple questions here from you and of course, that trade analysis. So come in here Sunday morning and please let us know your settings when you come in, everybody. Aaron, thanks for the comfort. You got it, my man. And then Chad was just timing in here. I agree. Trading Deebo high. Mark Andrews gives you the high potential of the weekly. So love the chat in here today, guys. Thanks so much for being a part of it. Really appreciate it. So see you Sunday, Juke. Boom. Now these guys are going out to pregame breakfast together before they come to the Sunday live show. That's what we do. That's what we do here is create the network. I love it. Let me bust out quickly before we get out of here. Couple sell highs, maybe keep it to 10, 15 seconds per reply here and we'll get out of here. Sell high, Jared Goff. It seems obvious. Like, yeah, Jared Goff had one big game. Sell him high, obviously. He's not had one big game. He's been playing well for quite a while. He's QB7 on the season. I just don't trust it long-term. DeAndre Swift coming back. They also have New England at New England, which I just think Jared Goff, Bill Belichick has already beat up Jared Goff in the Super Bowl a few years ago. Not worried about that. Then they have a bye week. We have to start considering bye weeks with trades. I would get rid of Jared Goff right now and go get another high-profile quarterback like Tom Brady, for example. 1-for-1 sounds insane, might be possible. Running back, Josh Jacobs. Huge game this week. I will guarantee you right now, this is definitely 100% the best game of the season for Josh Jacobs. No question about it, in my opinion. Probably the best game of his career. I'd have to check the notes. I would get rid of him immediately for a couple of packages because he's a high-profile running back with a name that people are kind of excited about. Go find the Raider fan. Everyone's got one in every league. Raiders they're like Cowboy fans. They're kind of like flies. You know what I mean? They're all over the place. Go find a Raider fan. Get him Josh Jacobs for a couple of pieces. Bring it back to your team. I think it'd be just fine. I already spoiled the lead here. My boy Deebo Samuel, massive game last night. Great to see him healthy. Great to see him bust that big play. Of course, he's the man. I love Deebo Samuel. But again, he had minimal targets, minimal receiving yards, no touchdowns until last night and wasn't getting the rushing opportunity. The Rams and the 49ers play a certain style of football every single game, and Kyle Shanahan is just punking his little brother every single time that they play. That's how it goes. Against the rest of the league, though, Deebo is not Deebo often. He's not been Deebo of last year. I would trade off of this massive game to get yourself, again, maybe a couple of pieces, or Mark Andrews for Deebo straight up might be something you could swing if you wanted to do that. Finally, another big name at tight end. I hate to say it. He's my man. I super root for Darren Waller as a human being. Been through some of the same things he's dealt with in my life, and I love this guy as a person. Love him as a football player. But the Raiders are not the Raiders we thought they were going to be. Devonte Adams gets the 1-yard screens on the goal line. Josh Jacobs runs it in from the 5-yard line. And if Darren Waller doesn't have 17 targets a game, he's not Darren Waller. So if you can go off of the name right now and capitalize on like TJ Hawkinson, even with DeAndre Swift out or something like that, I would make that move personally. Matt, I'll click it to you, maybe 15, 20 seconds per guy. Jared Goff, Josh Jacobs, Deebo Samuel, Darren Waller.
How about 5 seconds? I agree with everything you said. Trade the names high. I don't have much else.
Done. I didn't have time for a sip.
No.
You threw me off my game there. Jeez, that was like a quick double play, shortstop, second base there.
People would be shocked how much a name goes in a fantasy football trade, which is why I made the point about DeAndre Hopkins. Do not let that owner sell you on DeAndre Hopkins by name. He's
totally agree.
Yep, it's not the same guy. So use the name to your advantage in a trade.
Juke and everybody else will see us on Sunday. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us once again on the Razzball Fantasy Football podcast and YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe right below, hit the bell, leave a comment, let us know your trade targets, your waiver pickups. Maybe we are totally left field, off base on somebody. Let us know below. Give me a subscribe right here at Sky Guasco, SkyGuasco. And of course, my man, Matt Stiles as well at Stiles 0808. Make sure you hit up Razzball at Razzball and at Razzball Fantasy as well. Download the podcast, leave a rate and review, and join us on Sunday mornings. We would love to see you bright and early, 3 hours before kickoff every single week. We'll catch you again right here on the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. Until then, I'm your host, Sky Guasco. For my man, Matt Stiles, we will catch you next time.